You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Battista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Susan Gulyas. Do this to get him hooked in the early stages of dating. Ladies, if you think that your person is nowhere to be found and you're on the verge of giving up, here is a story to inspire you to keep going and never give up. I'm super happy to introduce you to my client, Susan Gulyas. She is a badass. She is a senior manager in engineering at Boeing. And right now she's at a special assignment working with the CEO and COO of damn Boeing. She is very smart. You could see if you're watching her on YouTube, very beautiful. And she came to me when she was in her late 30s, pretty frustrated. And the reason I'm going to give you the punchline is so you just keep listening and now she's doing this sesh from the home she got with her partner, fiance, soon-to-be husband. So as we say around our campus, this shit works. And I wanted you to get a breakdown of what she did so that you can understand what's possible when you do it in a new way. So Susan, thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so let's state, and the reason why I said don't give up is because one thing that's true about me is, I'm not going to make some bullshit marketing, meet a man in 10 weeks or less, or, text your way back to get this is about changing your life and working the process and having the resiliency and knowing that ultimately it's going to work out for you. So I'm super excited for you to share that process. So you came to me, you were 37. What was life like? How are you feeling? What were your beliefs about yourself, your possibilities, all those things?
When I found you, and it's a funny story because it came from, there was some dating show on VH1. Remember VH1?
Yes, yes.
I'm dating myself. And so it was Why Am I Still Single? And I remember watching it with my mom, and I signed up for a newsletter from the creator of the show, and she was recommending people, and you were one of the people that she recommended in her emails. And so simultaneously, one of my dear friends, who's now a psychologist, at the time he was not, but very, very wise. He was he really opened my eyes. It was a really formative time because I was complaining about how single I was and how there were no good Christian men out there. I'm a woman of faith and they're all duds and, all the things. And him and his best friend were like, Susan, there is no reason why you shouldn't have the white picket fence, the perfect guy, the dog, the kids, all the things. It's not true. And I was like, whatever, you guys, you totally don't get it, all the things, right? So
right.
You asked the question about limiting beliefs. What did I believe about myself? I believed all the negative things. I believed I was too old to get married. I believed there was nobody out there for me. And I was picking not well. I was not picking well at all. So I was picking men who were reinforcing that belief, right?
Was there? Okay, I'm having flashbacks. Was there some guy that maybe you were friends with or lived in your building?
Yes. No, don't remind me. Yes. Oh my gosh, it's terrible. Yes. And it was that after the other. I really struggled to flirt, so I really struggled to get attention from men in a positive way, right? So I resorted to the only way that I knew how from college. I learned it in college, was to flex my sexual muscles, right? It was sleeping around. It was, drinking and being the party girl. It was being the super fun chick, right? Because that was what's going to attract a really great guy and, want him to marry me. And so, look, I didn't have anyone to teach me. I had wonderful people in my life. I had wonderful mentors in my life, but I had no one teaching me since college and before what to look for and how to be. And I realized very early on, right before I met you, which is why I picked you, it was just so serendipitous. And I mean, I don't actually believe in serendipity. I believe it was God, but I mean, the way that it all came together, because after my guy friends told me all those things and made me realize, like, wait, there's something I need to do here. I was like, when I want to get fit, I get a personal trainer, right? So if I want to learn how to date well, then why don't I hire someone or work with someone who actually knows what they're talking about, right? Certainly they can teach me something. But of course, I was thinking it was like teaching me the mechanics of dating, like how to dress on a date, how to flirt with a guy, like where to go to meet men. And I mean, those things I wanted to learn too. So I was going to a therapist as a result of this conversation with my guy friends. And then I read your book that was online.
Yeah.
I read it in a jiffy. I was like eating it all up. And the words that you said and the things that you were teaching were in parallel to what my therapist was teaching me. There was something that you said that really stood out to me in your book. It was about the energy that we put out, right? The energy that attracts, not only men, but, your friends and human relationships, right? And so I was like, okay, let's go for it. So you were doing a conference.
Yeah, I was doing like a live event. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I flew down to California and I went to that, and that rocked my world. It was, I don't know, like 150 beautiful, amazing, talented, brilliant, successful women all in a room. And all of them were like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I get a guy? And I was just like, I'm not alone. Like, this is wow, So like just being in that space, in that community, just completely opened my eyes. And I will never forget. I'm gonna read them to you. Find them on my phone, but I will literally never forget. There was a session that you had us do, and it was I have an album in my phone called Dating Well. I've kept all of like the advice and all the things so that when I have someone else to, coach or be a part of their lives, if they're dating and struggling, that I can pull all this up on my phone.
I love it.
100%. Okay. So there were a few things at the conference or the live event that I'll mention. But the first thing that happened that really, really shook me to the core was we had these little name tags.
Oh yeah. Yep.
The little labels like behind the name tag. And so, and I don't think anybody knew that they were there.
No.
And you were like, okay, take out the little labels from your name tag. We had no idea what was coming. And I mean, again, there's like 150 people, women all sitting there listening. And you said, write down the number one, like, mother of all limiting beliefs, right? And we just gone through this whole module on what limiting beliefs were, and I'd already gotten some exposure to that from your teachings and stuff. And so it was like the mother of all of them, right? And I wrote down, I'm not worthy of a godly man. I'm not worthy of the love of a godly man. Like, that was ultimately it for me. I was like, not only am I not going to meet a man who loves me, but he's not going to be the man of God that I want so much to partner with, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I need someone who is with me in the faith department, because from that flows out like the rest of who I am and the decisions I make. So I wrote that down, and then you were like, okay, now walk around the room and introduce yourself as what you just wrote down on the label. And I was like, whoa, that's okay. Okay.
We made you put the label in so that it was your name. Your new name tag was like, I am not worthy.
Yes, 100%. So I'm literally, and we had to go introduce ourselves to like 5 people or whatever. And so I literally had to walk up to these beautiful women and say, hi, my name is Susan and I'm not worthy of a godly man. And they're looking at me and they're like, what are you talking about? And then they read theirs, which was equally as ridiculous as what I just said, right? And just totally 100% untrue. But like, it didn't register how ridiculous it was until you heard this beautiful, talented, successful woman standing in front of you saying the same thing. And you're just like, well, it's not true for you, but it's true for me. Right? And you're like, it can't, but like, so that like totally shook me up and obviously was really, really formative. And one of the other things, and then I'll read the culmination of what happened at your live events, and then how you and I came to work together in person. So another thing that was really, really eye-opening to me was you had a panel, and it was a panel of men in different stages of relationship status, if you will.
Acquisition.
Right? Yeah. And so there was like the single guy, there was the engaged guy, there was the married guy, there was the divorced guy, right? Whatever it was like 4 or 5 lovely men. They all seemed very, very, outgoing, very, very lovely, very, men of character, right? Who were successful in like all the things. They weren't like deadbeats. They were like guys that you want to listen to, right? Obviously, because you put the panel together.
Yeah.
So I remember standing there or sitting there listening to them and, learning a lot from what they were saying. And then they were like, okay, it's Q&A time. So, get in line and there's a microphone in the middle of the room and you can ask whatever questions you want. And there was a woman in front of me, again, that I'll never forget. There was a beautiful woman in front of me and she asked the question, I'm a doctor and I feel like if I tell a man that I'm a doctor, especially early on, it's intimidating and he like runs for the hills and it's like, just like a surefire way to get him to not want to date me. And I remember one guy saying to her, and it was like crass, but like it almost needed to be because it was like so, to the point, right?
Right.
He was trying to get his message across and he was like, what are you talking about? He was like, you are beautiful. You're a doctor. Like the man who falls in love with you and is worthy of your love is going to just cherish that, is going to be so proud of the fact, like my woman, my love is a doctor. I'm so proud of her. And I remember listening to that because I'm a, you mentioned that I'm a senior manager in engineering and similarly, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I'm successful in my career. And very similarly, I've always felt like I can't lead with that. Like if I tell people I work at Boeing or if I, I'm doing well, they're going to be like, just, automatically it sets a tone and they don't want to have anything to do with me. And so I resonated with what she was saying, like, but like in a painful way,
Right.
Because it was a belief. It wasn't just like oh yeah, like I get that. It's like, no, like I believe that about me too. And so the response that the gentleman had for her was so it just shook me. It was like, wow, okay, you know what? You're right. And would you believe that right after that event, it was literally, it was the guy who lived in the apartment complex, but that's not the point. Like I went home back to Seattle and I ran into this guy and he was an engineer too. And so when he asked me, he's like, so what do you do for a living? I, automatically like those feelings cropped up of, oh gosh, like don't tell him that you're an engineer, right? And then I remembered what literally just happened like a few hours ago. And I very confidently shared with him, I'm an engineer at Boeing, and I didn't say it in a weird way, like,
right,
I'm an engineer at Boeing, like, well, like I was just super confident about it and positive about it. And he was like, wow, he's like, that's so cool. Like I'm an engineer too. And I was like, this is the first time the energy changed around the conversation, right? So anyway, so I was seeing immediate results right after your event, which was awesome. After that panel and after the whole event and everything, and after what I'm about to read you too, I also remember going out with some girlfriends, not from the live event, but I had some friends in town or that I was visiting. And we went out for drinks afterwards. And like, I was sitting next to a gentleman and he was flirting with me and he was very interested in talking to me, which was not what I experienced ever.
Okay.
Because the energy that I was putting out
was already shifting.
You and prior to, starting therapy and everything was this whatever energy that wasn't attractive. And all of a sudden, like literally right after your live event, I'll never forget it. Like this guy is totally talking to me. And I said to my girlfriends, I was like, you guys, like it worked. It's working. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, which is also a very important part of the story, which I'm sure you'll remember, but it's one of the things that I remember most about my coaching sessions with you. But back to the live event, this was like the culmination of how impactful the work that you did with all of those ladies in that room when I was there was to me. So at the end of the event, you had us write down on another piece of paper, like a tag, because it had a little thing to hang with, a little string to hang with.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Remember? And you had us write down like the opposite, if you will, of the limiting beliefs, right? Something that we claim, something that we will believe to be true. And you and your staff agreed to stand alongside us and agree with us, right?
Yes. That was such a beautiful, that was so beautiful. Yep.
I mean, I think spiritually, like that's really, really powerful when we do that. And so anyway, I wrote down, because I went to your live events twice, and this was the first one that I wrote down. The first one that I wrote down, let me make sure I get this right. Yeah, okay. So the first one that I wrote down was, and here it is. This is what it looks like. I like.
Oh yeah, there's a little tag. I love that you took a picture of it.
I know. So it says, I claim self-forgiveness and self-love from today forward. I am worthy of the love of a perfect God and the love of an amazing godly man.
Oh.
So 6 months later, I did it again. I went with a girlfriend, and you could already see 6 months later the shift in the words and the work that you were helping me do alongside my therapist. And so here's the second one.
Okay, I love it.
It says, and the date is 6/18/2016. And it says, I claim that I am precious to God, that he loves me just as I am, and that through that soulful belief can come a loving relationship with a wonderful and godly man.
Oh, I love that. It's like you deepened into it and then you expanded it, right? It was like the forgiveness part, and then it's the acceptance and the owning it, right? And I think that's such a huge thing. And I just really want to acknowledge that, because I talk to a ton of women, obviously. They go to therapy and they're like, yeah, I did some shit, like, I'm not proud of it, but I'm over it. Like, I got to move on. But the shame and the feeling like this is why no one would ever love me, or why I'm not worthy, or I don't feel a divine connection, whatever that is, it's still there. And I think so many people are just trying to like bury it. But until you forgive yourself, forgiveness is a huge part of the work that I do, and really heal that with yourself before you even forgive others, it's really hard to let someone truly, truly love you. And so that work that you did on self-forgiveness is foundational and so, so important, and most often overlooked, for sure. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you. So the other really fun part of the story is, I think it was I'm pretty sure it was at the second, maybe it was the first. I don't remember if it was the first or second live event, but I approached you and I came to you for coaching. And so we met, I think, 10 times.
Yeah.
And it was probably the second time. And I was seeing results. Men were coming out of the woodwork. It was like, what happened? Like, this never happened before. Men were approaching me in real life. I was getting dates online. Like, it was just this complete energy shift, and this complete, like the spout opened on like the men in my life. And so, including this guy that you spoke of, who I was in my apartment building, who ended up being a huge no, but I didn't know that at the time, right?
Right. Yep.
And so I had to learn through these things. And so I was making bad decisions because I had all of these guys now that all this attention that I didn't have before. And again, we're like session 2 out of 10. And I remember you saying, Susan, you're going on a dating fast. And I was like, what? No, like, what are you talking about? I've been waiting my whole life for this. Are you kidding me? I'm like, I've already been doing the work. We've been like, like I've been in therapy. Like, I went to your live events. Like, I'm working with you now. Like, you can't do that. But of course, I mean, if you're going to work with someone, you're going to do what they tell you to do, right? Because you respect them and you know that they want the best for you. And so we're like, you are going on a dating fast. And I remember distinctly, you and some of my wisest friends said to me, and I'm pretty sure you said like these exact words, you are like a baby learning to walk. You have these newfound skills and this newfound energy that you've now tapped into, like these superpowers that you didn't know that you had, and you have no idea how to wield them. So you're making bad decisions, you're making destructive decisions, like cool your jets, and we're going to work through this. And we did. And so, one other thing I should mention about my working with you is, remember how I said that when I read your book, my intention was, okay, I've got the therapist, the Christian counselor who I'm, all the things, right? But what I need is someone to teach me how to date. What I didn't realize, and what I'm now so thankful for, is that, you were not only a dating coach, but a life coach, right? And so much more. And so the work that you and I were doing together was to shift like the energy with which I was picking, that I was using to pick, right? The men that I was picking were not good for me because they were commensurate with the limiting beliefs that I had for all these years. So as I undid those limiting beliefs, my natural inclinations and my desires and my attractions for a guy were naturally going to shift. And so what I didn't realize is I had to figure out what was going on in here for me to naturally attract the guy who is going to love me and who, is worthy of my love, right? And so that's what I didn't know. I was like, I had no idea what I was in for, right? But
that's what happens.
I'm so grateful because, anybody can teach you, give you tips on what to wear or how to flirt or whatever, but that wasn't it. That wasn't the meat of the work that needed to happen. So fast forward to me and you working together, you're like, you're going on a dating fast. I'm like, no. And I remember being so mad at you. And I was just like, what? How did I get
what dating coach tells you not to date?
I know.
It still happens. Like all these years later, people are like, wait, that's how we're starting? I'm like, yeah.
Yep. And so from like session 2 to by the time I got to, I think like session 7 or 8 or something, because we met like monthly, I was in a completely different headspace. I was in a completely different heart space, right? Like soulfully, I was starting to shift, and I was believing now that I had a self-worth that I didn't have before. And that was a result of like some of my upbringing. It was a result of my past and everything. But I had to your point, like the self-forgiveness, and I had to go through that journey to then naturally attract a wonderful, wonderful man that if I didn't do that work, I never would have. Because Craig, the love of my life, who I'm about to marry in June, he would never, I can promise you, he would never have been attracted to me then. Never. And I never would have been attracted to him because I started being attracted to completely different men because I was the one who always liked the edgy guy, right? Like the bad
guy.
That guy, right?
Well, wait, let me ask you this question. Because again, I've coached a zillion people, but I just want to make sure, maybe this is a memory of someone else, but I feel like it was you. I remember you you decided to go for drinks with apartment guy. There was something and you were like, I'm going. And you came back. Was this you? And you came back and you were like, it's like, I'm not even attracted to him. Was that you?
Yeah, me and like everybody else on the planet, right? Who was going through that.
You were like, it was like going to kryptonite and then being like, oh my God, like it's just gone. That attraction to the wrong person was like, and it felt so weird to like not have it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in California, there was actually a guy too who from high school I knew who I was super attracted to, and he wasn't the right guy. I knew he wasn't the right guy. I knew it wasn't a long-term thing. But even when I was in California with you, I took the time to go see that guy, and he was bartending nearby. And same story, like I wasn't even physically feeling well. I was in the car, I was like in my Uber to go visit him, and I physically wasn't feeling well. And I was like, maybe I should turn around. And I was like, no, I'm going to push through and I'm going to go anyway. And I remember talking to my girlfriend about it afterwards. She's like, seriously? She's like, you had a physical like reaction. And like, we believe again, from a spiritual standpoint that like, that was a sign, right? From God showing you to not go. And you're just like suppressing it and just like, no, I'm going to go anyway. And eventually it fizzled out with that guy too, obviously. But yeah, I mean, yes, that was absolutely my story.
That's amazing. Okay, so you shifted your energy. So, and by the way, now like a couple of years had passed maybe. So are you like 39 at this point? 38?
So you and I finished working together one-on-one. Yeah, I would say probably 39. Things had shifted. I was getting more hits, if you will, on online.
Yeah.
I was on Bumble. I was on Hinge. I tried eHarmony. Literally, you name it. I was on all of them.
Right.
And I was going on date here. Okay, this was really, really important too. And I was working with you as I was doing this, but the journey continued for like a year or two at least. Really, really heavy, like the first probably 6 months to a year. I didn't know who I was as a dater, right? I didn't know my dating style.
Right.
I didn't know how to date well. I didn't know how to be comfortable in my own skin on a date, right? And so kind of going back to the whole, like, you know, you want to get fit, you hire a personal trainer. Like I needed to practice. And so I decided, and it, you know, it's kind of juvenile looking back on it, but it worked. I decided that because the year prior, I think I went on like 2 dates or something.
Right.
And I decided, like, I'm going to go on 18 dates in, you know, whatever year it was. And that was my goal. I didn't like socialize it or anything, but my closest friends all knew. And I like surpassed my goal, which was just crazy that I went on that many dates.
Right.
I like barely ever went on a date prior to that. And so the purpose wasn't necessarily the volume of dates. And, you know, I mean, I was hopeful that maybe I would meet my right guy. But really more than that, what I was trying to figure out was who am I on a date, and how, you know, like how can I be myself, right? And so it was less about determining whether this guy was the right guy for me, and it was more about, let me just be super fun, let me just be open, let me, you know, who knows if this is the right guy? Because, yeah, like before that, it was like, you know, no, like I would never date a guy like that or whatever. It was like, you know what? I'm just going to be open. I'm not going to like sleep with all these guys. It's literally, I'm going to go on a date with the guy and take it from there, and learn how to date well as a woman of character and a woman of integrity.
And
right?
as your new authentic self, right?
Yeah.
Like you gotta, and I think this is really, really an important piece, because here's the thing. If you don't have a strategy, if your energy hasn't shifted, then you can't just turn on the faucet and go out with a bunch of guys that are pretty cool, even if they're not your guy. And so I really want everyone to hear that, because if you're slogging through the men that you meet on Match or Bumble from the low vibration, the low frequency, and you're like, I'm going to do what Susan did, you're going to be like, ugh, right? Because it'll just reinforce all the, right? You'll be collecting evidence of your limiting beliefs. So this is why the process works in a certain order, right? So you got rid of all this shit, you got centered on who you are, and then you're like, turn on the faucet, practice dating, learn about myself. I wish there was an express bus to like, and then I met my fiance, but it just usually doesn't happen like that. Okay, so then what happened?
And I'll tell you a funny story too of something that really resonated with me that I'll never forget that you taught me. I remember there was one particular guy, and again, this is pretty early on in the dating, and this guy, like I was fairly certain he wasn't the guy. And so I was out. I wasn't even on a date that I had scheduled through online. I was out with girlfriends or something. And same story. I was like waiting to get a drink, and the guy sitting next to me started flirting with me. And I was like, again, this never used to happen, you guys. Never, 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 never happened. Because I was just putting, like, I had some wall up, and like, even if a guy found me attractive, it was like he would never even dare approach me. I don't know if I had like a scowl on my face or like what it was, but it was real. And so anyway, he's flirting with me. And I just wasn't interested at all. I was like, it's a no from me. And so he's like, can I have your phone number? And I was like, yeah, sure, you know? And so I gave him, because I wasn't yet mature enough, and we were working one-on-one during this time, you and I wasn't mature enough in my communications. And again, like even in my self-worth journey, to be able to confidently and kindly say to him, thank you so much, but I'm not interested, right?
Right.
Like, that doesn't feel good when you have no self, or you're struggling with self-worth. That doesn't feel good,
totally.
right? That is really, really hard to do. And so I was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, I'm never going to call this guy. Like, I'm just totally going to blow him off, right? That's the plan. Great plan. So he takes my phone number. Sure enough, he texts me, and I totally lied to him, and I told him I was seeing somebody or whatever, right? And here I am, like, trying to do my best to be a woman of integrity and a woman of character. And I'm literally lying to this guy. And I told you the story, and I distinctly remember you saying to me, Susan, you were literally doing no different than the guy that says he's going to call you and he never calls you. Like, it's literally the exact same thing. And that was so compelling to me. I was like, whoa, like, I don't want to be that person at all, right? And so from that day forward, and you gave me scripts. Like, I remember texting you and like reading your material and stuff with like literal scripts of what to say.
Yep.
And I remember talking to you, and I'm like, so what you're telling me is I'm literally supposed to say to him, thank you so much, I'm not interested, or whatever it is, like, all the best. And you're like, yeah. And to you, it was just like, yeah, that's what you do. And I'm like, I can't And so, again, like fast forward down the journey, but it was second nature. It became second nature at some point to just be authentic and say, hey, thank you so much for the compliment, or, you seem lovely. I don't see us as being a match. So all the best to you, right? I mean, it became not weird anymore to just be on it. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want you to waste your time, right? I'm actually like,
and that's actually the kindest thing. There's two things I think I told you, and I say this all the time. It's actually the kindest thing to do, because someone else is going to be like, oh, I suck, right? So to be kind and be honest is like reflection of honesty that can feel good for a person. But even more important is, when you don't tell someone the truth, you are disrespecting them, because you're assuming they can't handle the truth, right? And that's disrespect. I mean, we don't know anyone. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. But do we want to assume that everyone is a child? No. So when you just confidently and graciously and kindly, I call that good dating karma, right? And what goes around comes around. So I love that you chose that story, because it's a small adjustment, but be the person you want to attract.
Mm-hmm. And I committed to never ghosting. Like I would not be the person to ghost. Like if something came up, if I, whether it was just a schedule difference or really I'm not interested in a person, like no matter how hard the message is, whatever it is, like at least be kind enough to say, thank you so much, all the best to you. Like I truly wish you all the best.
I love that. And it's funny. So when I was coaching with you, it was back when I was doing one-on-one, and then I didn't for a really long time, and now I am again, and now I use another technology besides texting. But I will say that the people that work with me one-on-one, that is like the golden ticket. Like that's the icing, right? Is that you're in a moment and you're like, I don't want to say what I usually say. I want to communicate how I now feel about myself, but no one taught me how to do that. And I don't know how to do that. So just give me the words until I can actually start to come up with them.
I still have them on my phone. I still have them. I could read them to you right now. I have them all the time. And I'm
so
like, just adjust them and reword them a little bit. But oh my gosh, they were so helpful.
Tips and scripts. Okay, so then what happened? This is good. Isn't this like reading a good book? Okay, and then what happened?
So I'm on this journey and I'm dating and dating and dating quite a bit. One of the things that I think was most impactful in how to choose the person that I wanted to be with, and again, not to be so prescriptive that you aren't open to someone who's not your type or whatever it is, right? I always tried to be, not always, like once you and I were working together, I tried to stay open and say, okay, he doesn't quite look the way, like my type or whatever, but maybe he's a great guy. Like, let's give him a shot.
Yeah.
And that's a mature move that I never would have made before working with you. So anyway, back to the technique. You taught us, you taught me to figure out what, not your 10, not your 15, but what your 5.
Old non-negotiables. Yeah.
Non-negotiables, 100%. And yeah, I'd already through Christian circles and small groups and stuff, I'd already kind of identified my top 10 or 15 or 20 or whatever, but it was 5. Wow. Okay, 5, that's not easy. And you were 5, no kidding. If they don't meet any one of these 5, it's a hard pass. It is a thank you so much, all the best to you. Absolutely not. I'm not, and again, you don't have to be a jerk about it, but it's no, I'm not interested. So I figured out what those 5 were for me, and I still remember them. It was obviously a man of faith, as I've mentioned, someone who wants a family, someone who is a provider, someone who, has a consistent career and can provide for their family, someone who is fun and adventurous. I just couldn't imagine being with somebody who wanted to sit around the couch all day or stay home and never travel. Me and my family, we have a nonprofit where we do humanitarian work overseas. So it's buckle up, we're going. And so that's important. And then finally, the 5th was communication, someone who had done the self-work themselves, whatever their story was, someone who could communicate, what they need, who they are, their emotions and stuff like that, which is not easy to find. Those 5 things are not easy to find.
Right.
But they were so important on my journey, because once I got past that phase of let me just go on every date that comes my way, so I can just kind of get comfortable and figure out what I want, how I'm going to be and how I'm going to dress and all the things. the less important things in my mind. Once I figure that part out, now I'm going to start becoming selective. And so my pool is like, this big, and now we're like down to here. But at least now I know that the people that I'm saying yes to, that there's an actual possibility here.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know whether they meet all 5 on date 1, obviously,
Right.
but as I get to know them, if it comes out that any one of those 5 aren't a priority to them or a match, then it's just not going to work. And so it gave me the freedom to be okay to say, hey, we're not a match, and I wish you all the best, right? Because I have these 5, and you don't need to tell the person that, obviously. But with those 5, I tried pretty quickly to get to the bottom of whether they met the 5.
Right.
I didn't want to go on 16 dates with them and then come to find that there's some deal breaker, right?
Yeah.
So that took practice too. You can't just walk up to someone and be like, so here are my 5, deal breakers. Like, where are you at with these 5? Like, that's weird. So I had to, invest the time and figure out my communication style enough to get to the bottom of it fairly quickly, whether it's in texting, online, or whether it's in real life in the conversations on a date. And so that meant that the dates that I was going on through the years, because this wasn't a quick journey for me. I mean, I have friends who the first guy that they met online ended up being their husband.
Right.
I mean, that's not my story, but I'm so grateful that my story unfolded the way that it did, because if it didn't, I wouldn't have met Craig.
Yeah.
So anyway, it got to the point where through the years, I wasn't going on 18 dates in 1 year. I was maybe only going on, and this might not sound super fun to some people, but it was my reality. Maybe I was going on, 5 or 6 dates a year. Right. And I was focusing on my life and doing my other things, but, I was also still investing because I needed to invest time and energy into dating if it was going to happen, but I knew that the people that I was saying yes to and potentially exploring as a future mate, that, there was possibility there. And I was very upfront on my journey. I was very upfront the moment I met somebody. If they were like, what are you looking for? Why are you on here? I was like, to meet the love of my life. I'm not going to beat around the bush. If that scares somebody, that's okay. Because you want my person.
And that's really important too. So I want everyone to the old way is oh, well, I want to make sure they like me. I like them. I don't want to be intimidated. No, you are so crystal clear. And to the right guy, he's yay, this person
finally
knows what they want and isn't afraid to say it. And that, I would say, talking to the men that marry or partner with my women that I work with, they have said to me directly or through their partner, you know what I love about so-and-so? She knows what she wants. She knows how to say it, and she's not afraid to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is right at the get-go. So yeah, this is what I'm looking for. What about you?
Same story. Craig would say the same thing about me, 100%. And that was part of this journey. Is here I'm this confident, self-assured woman. When my energy was off, it was coming off as off-putting,
right,
to men in a romantic way. But once you figure out, again, once you unlock the self-worth and the confidence, and you truly believe I'm worth a guy who will love me and who will be, everything that I've ever dreamed of, your energy completely shifts, and you go from being, perceived as this, super aggressive, whatever, woman, to a woman who can confidently and kindly and femininely say what you want. That's so key. That is so important. Here's another thing I'll share about your what I learned from you. That really, really stuck with me. So I remember in that vein, you teaching that the way that you say certain things or the way that you behave in front of a man can communicate either, masculine energy or feminine energy. This whole masculine, feminine energy thing was an eye opener to me. And it's so real, and it's so true. So I remember 2 examples that you gave of little shifts in how we can communicate differently is, for instance, when we're in the car and we're with our guy and he doesn't know how to get to said place and he needs directions, obviously, the masculine energy way of reacting and communicating with him is, really, take a left. Like, it's right there. I know where we are. I can get us there. So take a left, take another right, and it's literally that way, right? You can communicate it that way, or you can say, hey, baby, I think it might be, and it's not a matter of sounding like a not assured woman or like, dainty or like
Right. Yeah.
and authentic, but to say, hey, baby, like, I think it's, if you take a left here, it's over there rather. Like, the two ways of communicating it are just so different. And he one, he would react to as in a negative way. And then obviously the other one is a softer, more feminine, positive way. I remember telling one of my girlfriends that, and she's a super rock star, like, confident, assertive woman. I remember telling her that story and her being like, absolutely 100% not. I would never, ever, compromise like who I am to say it that way. And I'm like, honey, that's not it. You're not compromising who you are. You're communicating something in a different way that's going to get you a different result ultimately.
Which is crazy because in work, that same person, we do that all the time. We're like, who's the audience? How do I need to handle this person? How do I manage this employee? Right? We actually, we moderate. But the other thing, I think, I'm really glad you brought that up because I believe that underneath that, like with saying I wouldn't be that way because that's not me. I believe underneath all of us, we are kind and we are soft. And I just interviewed someone, you'll find this really interesting. And she was saying that what happens is we get in these dynamics as women that we're just so used to having to compete and prove how smart and capable we are, that with the very people we're trying to partner, which is side by side, we get into this opposition, right? So in that example, you're like, I'm smarter, dumbass, go this way. And he's like, I'm the dude, stop it. Like, I know where, right? And so it's not compromising who you are anyway. It's like, why are we always trying to compete with the person that we're partnered with by showing that we're smarter? We don't need to do that. So we can be who we really are. It's not a competition. Just be helpful, kind, and soft and generous. So I love that. Okay, so tell us how you met Craig.
Wait, one more really quick example because I know there's women out there who do this because I did this all the time. In that same vein, whenever when we were making plans to go out to dinner, I thought it was super helpful to be like, well, I really like this place and that place and that place. Or why don't we go here because it's like my favorite place, or this place is really great or whatever. Like I love entertaining. I love hospitality. So like I'm always the one that people come to for which restaurant should I go to. So I thought I was being super helpful. What I didn't realize is to a man who, I didn't realize that when a man plans a date, that's really important to some men. Like that's a way that they show love and they show that they care. So it's really important for them as a gift to you, if you will, for them to plan the whole thing. So when you are like, well, plan it this way, it can, even if you're soft and sweet when you say it, it can come off as off-putting. So I had to force myself to just be like, if he said, hey, how about the sushi place? I don't really like sushi. I'm like, you know what? That sounds great. Because A, I knew that sushi places will likely have something else I can find. Else. Or B, if it's really an issue, I can say, I don't love sushi. How about Italian? And then that gives him the leeway to then say, okay, well, let me pick the restaurant or something. You know what I mean? So these
100
little shifts. It was hard at first, but
so hard. Yep, so hard. Okay, so now, Craig, let's tell everybody where you are now. And
so I was like 38, 39 when I was working with you, and I'm now 44. I'm the woman like so many others who thought, my dream was I'm going to get married at 25. I'm going to have 4 babies, like all the things. And so I got to a place where I was like the perpetual single woman in my friend circle. I was the last one to get married. I was, and sometimes I was content and sometimes I wasn't. Sometimes I was in a great place, a great headspace, a great place in my spirit. Yeah. Sometimes I wasn't. And it was really, really hard. Even after I worked with you, after I did all the self-work and I knew that I deserved so much better, it was still hard. And I remember, just praying like constantly and like shaking my fist at God. And I'm just like, where is he? I'm ready. I wasn't ready before, but I'm ready now.
So here's a really interesting spiritual thing that I think that you can say now, because you see it back when you said, if it wouldn't have gone that way, I wouldn't have met Craig, right? And someone said to me once, true faith really comes in when you are at the border of like truly giving up.
Mhm.
You could say, oh, I have faith. I'm a woman of faith, right? But when you really, really like all is lost and you can't see anything in front of you, that's when you go, okay, divine, you clearly have something fucking epic like for me. I don't really like this right now, but like I'm not giving up, right? I'm staying with it. And that is truly understanding that life is happening for you, not to you. And so I love that you said it was really hard because I always want to be really honest on this show. And that's what it takes is resiliency, which is part of what I baked into you so that when you're in those moments, you could keep standing up and not say, well, maybe I'm meant to be single, never mind.
I mean, I had to come to that reality, like really grapple with that, right? It was like, maybe singlehood is my future though. Like really, truly, I mean, I'm praying and hoping and dreaming that it isn't. And I have to keep the hope because if I don't keep the hope, then we go back to the whole negative energy and like all this stuff, right? So I can't do that. I can't do that.
Can't do that. Yeah.
Right. So, but I mean, I have to also be okay with the possibility of that, but I'm just going to hold on to hope and I'm going to keep believing and I'm going to keep doing the things. And, you know, sometimes I would be too busy to focus on the online dating because I stayed online the whole time, but I narrowed it down to Bumble, League, and Hinge. I got almost nothing from Hinge, almost never. Great, like high quality, but like it almost never turned into a date. Bumble was super high volume, which worked for me. I appreciated that. But it also took energy, right? Because you're swiping and left and right a lot. And then what was the other one? The League. I got like almost nobody from that. It's pretty limited to, like around the country and everything. So I think their pools were just small. So I stayed on Bumble, and at one point Bumble changed their whole business model or whatever, where you used to be able to have said number of filters for free, but then they in an effort to make money, right, and stay profitable, they limited it and said like you can get 2 for free, and anything beyond that you have to pay or whatever. And so so where before I had whatever education, face, and whatever the few were on my filters, it ended up having to be literally like his age and his location. Like,
right.
I mean, I had to start there, right, and then anything beyond that I had to pay money. So I'm like, okay, so now my pool, which was like this small because I had faith, I had Christian as a filter. Now my pool was like this big, and I'm just swiping and like left and right, like nonstop all day, and like all these people who are like absolute huge no's, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So one morning I was swiping, and I'm like, I don't have the time for this, or the energy for this. And they offered like for $150, Bumble would, like, you'd have a lifetime membership or whatever. You can have as many filters as you wanted. And I'm like, that's worth it to me.
Right.
Like, I've already invested so much money in like finding the right guy, but $150 is worth it to me if it again, my pool gets down to here.
Yeah, totally.
So, but I'll tell you what, like I'll be honest. I mean, I struggled during that time. I was getting plenty of hits and plenty of options, if you will, but so often the conversations would just die. It'd be like really exciting, like for a day or two or whatever, and they completely disappear. I got to situations where we scheduled a date. It was like, I will see you at said place on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. And he would completely not like flake, the night of, but like I would reach out to say, hey, just, confirming or whatever. We haven't talked in 5 days, like, and he'd disappear, or he would unmatch me, right? We'd make plans, and it was constant. It was like all the time. It was one thing after another. And I was just, again, shaking my fists. And I'm like, I have to believe that you're doing this on purpose. Like you're saving me for someone, or from something, because this is crazy. Like it doesn't even make any sense, because it's one after the other. No, 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 no. And no matter how promising it seems. And it was painful. It was really, really hard. It was really hard. And all I kept telling myself, and this is so key, ladies, like, hear this. It only takes one.
Right.
It only takes one. And every time, I mean, I'll be honest, like every time I talked to somebody, it was like, is this him? Maybe this is right. Him,
Exactly.
And it was hard because you would open your heart just a little bit because you get excited, and then you'd have to shut it back down again because you're like, this isn't the guy, right? So this constant back and forth and back and forth. It was so hard. But finally, with Craig, and it's just looking back on it now, it's so fun. We actually saved our whole Bumble conversation.
Oh, I love that.
Like, he found a way to save the videos in the Bumble app and everything. You couldn't export it from the Bumble app, but he figured out. So we have it all. Our first conversations, we have it all.
That's so cute.
Yeah, my intro question coming out of the gate, this was my standard question, was, where are you taking me on your dream vacay? And he was like, well, I'm actually on my way to Miami here in a few hours. So I'm going to say Miami for right now, which, ladies, do you realize how crazy that is? I was actually living in Seattle for 15 years. I moved to Charleston for work because I'd loved Charleston since college and I wanted to move there. I went back to Seattle. I lived in Charleston for 6 years. I moved all my stuff. I bought a house, like all the things.
Yeah.
I met nobody in Charleston. I went back to Seattle on a business trip, and I met him on Bumble while I was on a business trip to Seattle. And he was on his way to Miami in a few hours, which means, if you don't know anything about Bumble, because it's location-based, if he would have gotten on that airplane, my swipe left, right, my queue of men, he would have disappeared. He would have instantly evaporated, and he wouldn't have been there. And so, again, from like a God, like the timing is perfect, like all the things, like it just came together. And so he goes to Miami and we're chatting, and he didn't even realize that I lived in Charleston. And he was like, until like 3 days later, he's like, so you live in Charleston?
I'm like, I don't,
right? And we kept talking, and 6 weeks later, he flew to Charleston. He said, this is going to be the most expensive first date of my life. And it was a Hallmark movie weekend. It was absolutely perfect. It was so sweet. And so for the next 8 months, we flew back and forth. Either we met in the middle somewhere, or we flew to each other's homes and got to know each other that way. And he has 2 beautiful children, Andrew and Emily, and they're 11 and 14. And so if we were going to make it work, I was going to need to get to know them. And so I moved back to Seattle in September of last year, and I bought this beautiful house with the intention that when we get married, he and Andrew and Emily are going to move in. And so we've been living life back in Seattle. I never would have moved back here. Everybody who knows me is like, you met somebody. You had to have met somebody. And I did. He is so wonderful to me. He is the opposite of the men that I was dating years ago. Like, this process, 100%. Like, your coaching, your what I love about you, and what was so compelling to me at that live event, was that you had an example. You brought a woman up on stage and you coached with her, like, real time.
Oh yeah.
And you just, in the kindest, most professional, most compassionate way, you just dug so deep, like so fast. And I was like, you know what? I want to work with someone who is not going to waste my time, is not going to waste my money, someone who is wise, who knows what they're talking about, and someone who can help me get the results that I'm looking for. And I mean, you did that in spades. And so I am eternally grateful. Craig and I are eternally grateful for your role in us and our future. And
look at your
past a few months ago, and we're getting married in Charleston in June. And
I just got the chills.
Happy.
Oh my God, how beautiful. I love Charleston, so I can imagine a June wedding. It'll be so easy.
Yeah.
Look, I really appreciate you talking about the whole process, because like I said at the beginning, and since I've been doing this for 14, 15 years, I think, there's so many people who'll be like, I'm a dating coach now, of all ages and expertise. And I would just say, whether it's me or anyone that you choose, this is not some hack. This isn't some magical thing, right? It's aligning all parts of the process, and then staying consistent and having the resilience. And when it's hard, it's hard. And when it's amazing, it's amazing. And if you realize that it is happening for you, and every single person that I've ever interviewed on this show or any other success story, they all come back and say, I wouldn't have done it any other way, because I wouldn't have been with this person. So I had to go through that, and it was worth it, because this is beyond, and this is what people say, beyond what I could have even imagined for myself. And you are having that. And I mean, there's nothing better than getting a text or a Facebook message from a client. He's like, I met my God. And all your photos, and all of those things. Well, I just appreciate so much your story. You're so articulate, and you really broke it down for us. And I love that. And you are beautiful inside and out, and so deserving of everything that you have. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing?
Please.
This is so key. This is so key. So back to the 5 non-negotiables.
Yeah.
When I was getting to know him and how I knew that this kind of goes without saying, but how I knew he was the one was there were no red flags with every guy. There were, whether it was the 5 non-negotiables or something else, it was obvious red flags. So please don't ignore the red flags. That is so hard to do when you're on this journey. But again, once you do the work, you get to a place where you're not afraid to say no to the red flags anymore, right?
Yeah.
You cannot stay. Don't stay and ignore the red flags. That was it. That's how I knew it was him. It was, wow, there's no red flag. Well, that's kind of a pink flag, right? I love that. That's your term. That's maybe a pink flag, maybe a yellow flag, but it's not a red flag. And he was the only person, no red flags. So that was key.
I love it. Ladies, share this with your friend who's like, am I going to be single forever? Give her some hope. Sending so much love. Of course, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, wow, Marni's doing one-on-one coaching again, I want that. Please hit us up, VIP@datingwithdignity.com. You can find me on Instagram, Marni Battista _. I'm on Facebook, Marni Battista. But whatever you do, like I would rewind this episode. I would take notes. I would create a folder like Susan did, right? Mm-hmm. Because the name of the show is Life Check Yourself. And someone asked me the other day, what's the number one thing? It was like an interview. What's the number one thing someone could do to find their person? And I was like, take responsibility that you are the common denominator in all your failed relationships and go from there.
100%.
Because
that's hard. That's hard to hear.
It's not men's fault. It's not online dating's fault. It's not 2020 whatever's fault. It's no fault. Everyone is guilty. No one is to blame. It's take action and really look at what is it that you can do to start to create what it is that you want. And then someday you'll send me a message and you'll be like, woo!
Just don't settle. Whatever you do, don't settle. Don't do it. In those tough, hard moments where you're like, being with this guy would be better than being single. It's not true. Don't do it.
True.
Don't put yourself in that kind of pain because it's not worth it.
It's not true. All right, ladies, life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Thanks again, Susan. Bye-bye for now, everyone. Woo. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high-caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes, and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Battista, and let's talk soon.